Hello everybody, welcome to Omar Gani M.E.S College Online Learning Hub. This is Khurshed Alam, Head Department of English. Today I will discuss and analyze Poetics by Aristotle. I will deliver a series of lectures on this book. The objective of this lecture is that this will provide comprehensive views and insights on Aristotle's thoughts and ideas on literary criticism. Aristotle, philosopher, psychologist, logician, moralist, political thinker, biologist, and the founder of literary criticism, was born at Stagira, a Greek colonial town on the northwestern shores of the Aegean, in 384 BC. He was the son of Nicomachus, a doctor, to King E.S II, the father of Philip of Macedon. He studied almost for 20 years at Plato's academy and probably taught there for some years. After leaving the academy, he was the tutor of Alexander the Great before the young Macedonian prince embarked on his campaign of the world conquest. As founder of the Lyceum at Athens, which continued many centuries after his death, Aristotle made an important contribution to education in the ancient world. He planned and organized far-reaching projects of empirical research, supported by Alexander and carried out by himself and his students, which led to many basic discoveries in the field of natural sciences. But his greatest achievements lay in the field of philosophy, developing Platonic thoughts along new lines of formulated certain basic concepts and principles of realistic philosophy, which have played a peculiarly important role in the history of Western culture. Poetics is a short treatise on dramaturgy and theatricals of 26 chapters. It is a kind of covert reply to his great master Plato and a systematic exposition of the theory and practice of poetry. It is classified into 6 parts. Part 1 to 5 discusses poetry and its classification. Chapter 6 to 19 is on tragedy. It discusses poetic diction in chapter 20, 21 and 22. Discussions on narrative poetry and tragedy dominate chapter 23, and in chapter 24 and 26 he brings out the differences between tragedy and epic, and chapter 25 he answered all the objections raised against his theory. Thus we can say that Poetics is a scientific study of writing and poetry, where Aristotle observes, analyzes and defines mostly tragedy and epic poetry. Compared to philosophy, which presents ideas, poetry is an imitative use of language, rhythm and harmony that represents objects and events in the world Aristotle posited. His book explores the foundations of story making, including character development and plot and storyline. In this introductory chapter, Aristotle makes a plan to deal with different critical concepts to be discussed in the subsequent chapters. Here he introduces one important thing, that epic poetry, tragedy, comedy and dithyrambic poetry, and the music of the flute and the lyre in most of their forms are all in their general modes of imitation. By this he stresses that one is different from other in terms of modes of imitations, medium, manner and object. Here Aristotle has talked about tragedy, epic poetry, comedy and lyric poetry. All these epic, tragedy and comedy differ one another in 3 respects. Number 1, the medium. Number 2, the objects. Number 3, the manner or mode of imitations. But the idea is that imitation is common to all forms. In poetry, the medium of imitation is the use of words, while in painting, the shades of colors. Poetry and painting thus differ in the medium of imitations. Chapter 2 is devoted to defining imitation, revealing its nature, discussing its kinds, and considering its importance in the creative arts. Therefore, he goes further to discuss the modes of imitation. The second mode, the first being medium, in which the genre differs in the objects of imitation. Poetry takes its object from the human action. In doing so, tragedy differs from comedy because the former imitates serious actions and the latter imitates comic action. Thus, tragedy and comedy differ in their object of imitation. Chapter 3 treats the third mode of imitation in which the genre differ. Tragedy and epic both imitate serious human action. They are therefore same in the object of imitation. Both tragedy and epic appear in words, medium of the imitation, therefore is the same. The question arises, are they same? It is not so. Aristotle creates a third mode of imitation, that is the manner of imitation. The manner of imitation varies from one literary genre to another. Tragedy is different from epic in the manner. Tragedy predominantly appears in dialogue, while epic predominantly in narratives. Chapter 4 deals with the origin and development of poetry. Poetry comes into the being because of two reasons. Firstly, man has the instinct of imitations from early childhood, and secondly, man always wants the incomplete nature to be in his favor by making it harmonious and lovely. Mythical stories prominent in epic forms are the earliest human expressions. In reality, there are two important tendencies that results in tragedy and comedy. Homer excelled in both veins. Homer's Iliad is pertaining to comedy, while Odyssey is pertaining to tragedy, and the further developments are observable along the same line. Tragedy goes back to the iambic chorus of the satyrs, and the comedy to the phallic songs and dance. In chapter 5, Aristotle compares comedy, tragedy, and epic among each other. Comedy, as he traces in the earlier book also, is an artistic imitation of man of an inferior moral bent. It is an imitation of characters of lower type. The characters have some defect or ugliness which is not painful or destructive. It has no clear history regarding its origin, though its history takes us to the Sicily and Athens to be the first places where it originated, and the poets writing this form would be use personal satires. Epic has much in common with tragedy insofar as the object and medium of imitations are concerned. They differ in following respects. Number 1, in the medium and the manner of imitation there is a difference. Epic employs one and the same meter throughout, while tragedy does not. Number 2, epic does not observe the concept of time, place, and action. Aristotle talks about the unity of action, less about the time and nothing about the place. 3. Epic is predominantly narrative in nature. Epic poetry agrees with tragedy insofar as it is an imitation in verse and employs the characters of higher type. Epic poetry is narrative in form and has no limitations of time, but tragedy should not exceed the time limit of a single revolution of the sun. All the elements of an epic poem are found in tragedy, but the elements of tragedy are not found in epic poem. This is the end of our session for today. In our next session, we will discuss most important chapter, especially chapter 6, that is the core chapter of the Poetics. Thank you for being with us. See you in the next session.